I also have, unfortunately, or fortunately for you, personal experience with grief. I lost my husband more than 6 years ago, and I've personally experienced the impact of grief on my own body, and have needed to find a lot of coping strategies for cooking for only one person, and motivating myself for all sorts of things, going to bed earlier. That's it's also very difficult when you are left on your own and grieving. So I know what it's like to go through a major loss, and also what to do to cope better with grief, because there are things that we can do to make the experience less painful, even though people may not think that there's anything we can do on a nutritional level. There is a lot we can do. So let's talk about the impact of grief. First of all, I think I swapped the order, never mind. So what can help us cope better with grief? Some knowledge about the impact of grief on our body, some nutrition basics, simple nutrition lifestyle tips, to be able to make small, helpful, gradual changes to our eating, drinking, sleeping, breathing, whatever habits we have, and to take back control of our health and well-being. So the impact of grief. So many people are surprised about the physical aspect of the impact of grief, and they get very confused about all the grief symptoms, the weird symptoms, they call them grief symptoms, that we can experience. So we are all aware of the mental and emotional component of grief, but the physical one is quite confusing for a lot of people. So anxiety and depression, everybody knows about that they are very common symptoms. So what's less well known is that grief can also trigger heart palpitations, high blood pressure, lung problems. We get very heavy feeling in the chest that can cause problems with breathing, as I know from my own experience. So the lungs get weak, and in traditional Chinese medicine, they also say the lungs are the seats of grief and sadness. Very important to keep that in the back of the mind. Sleep goes out of the window. As I've mentioned before, we get brain fog, or it's also called widow's brain. We get all sorts of weird aches and pains, but also digestive issues, because our digestion takes a big hit. So I was recently contacted by the ladies. I want to share this story, and she started having chronic constipation a year after her husband died, and Western doctors couldn't find the reason. They did a colonoscopy, they did I think some other examinations, couldn't find the reason for her chronic constipation. And then she came across my blog for Full Circle Funerals that I did for you a few years ago, and all of a sudden it all made sense to her, and she felt so much better. And she wrote to the organization I'm a member of, Widowed and Young, to thank me and give me that feedback, which I found really lovely. So let's go back to this slide. So what's behind our grief symptoms? So unfortunately, grief is perceived as a threat. All these intense emotions, they trigger a massive stress response. And this stress impacts our gut and digestion. So that's the gap in the knowledge between what's going on, stress and digestive issues, or no, stress, grief and grief symptoms, and what's the link? It's the digestive system. So when our digestion is affected, we not only get digestive issues, we also get nutrient deficiencies, because we can't break down the food properly anymore. It's not well absorbed, and when we don't absorb the nutrients, the broken down nutrients, we don't get the vitamins and the minerals and all the other things, amino acids that we need to function. And get the energy out of the food. And if that goes on for a longer period of time, this can cause chronic health issues. And then we also, what's overlooked is the well-researched link between the gut and the brain, the gut-brain axis, as it's called. So people always consider only the brain and the mind, but the gut and the mind are actually in constant, and the brain are in constant communication with each other. That goes through the immune system, through the hormones and neurotransmitters, but also through the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the autonomic nervous system, and which has two branches, and one is the fight and flight mode, and the other one is the rest and digest mode. So, God, slides are moving by themselves. And so there's this two-way communication highway, and the vagus nerve also gets affected by grief, because stress and deactivates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode, and puts us into the other mode, the fight and flight mode. So, so grief affects the mind, but the mind and the body are interlinked. We must never forget this. So mental health, if you think mental health, you also always have to think gut health, because you can see this feedback loop. When somebody has anxiety, which is quite normal when we're grieving, you know, somebody pulls the rug from under our feet, we don't recognize the world we find ourselves in anymore. So that triggers anxiety. Then we get breathing problems that can make anxiety worse, but also we live with trillions of microbes in our gut, and the beneficial ones are vital for our health, and stress impacts them. So, and makes the more harmful ones thrive, and the beneficial ones are unfortunately decimated. So, and also when we are anxious, we are tense in our digestive system. There's also muscles in there, the smooth muscles, they get tense. So we get gas and bloating, and that is signaled back to the brain. So it actually makes anxiety worse, right? So all the things that are going on in the guts, the gut bacteria, and also the digestive issues and what we eat can make anxiety worse. Have I forgotten anything? No. So we have already talked about this. So we get poor digestion, malabsorption of nutrients, and therefore we also get a lot of food cravings, because cravings are the body's way of signaling what it actually needs. So cravings are something quite natural. Now, first of all, mentioning this first, we get nutrient deficiencies, like magnesium, for example, can cause cravings for chocolate, but it's the dark chocolate that we actually, want to have, because dark chocolate is rich in magnesium, but most people then go for white chocolate, which is not beneficial and full of sugar. We also get sweet cravings, which is natural, but it's not cravings for sugar actually, but it's cravings for sweet tasting food. And sweet tasting food is everything that's building and nourishing, because grief depletes us and we want building and nourishing food. So the sweet cravings are always mistaken for, and people in our modern day society, they go to the foods, the convenience food with sugar, the cakes, the biscuits, the bread, the dairy. Dairy is also, has lactose in it, and can, a lot of grieving people become addicted actually to dairy products like cheese, very common. So that's very important to know. So magnesium is for example, important for 300 different functions in the body, and is depleted when we are highly stressed, as we are in grief. Then we also get electrolyte imbalances because we have a lack of magnesium, and magnesium is one of the main electrolytes in the body, which regulates, for example, how waste material gets transported, how nutrients get transported into the cells and waste transported out of the cells, but it's also vital for our water balance in general. And another fact is, of course, that we tend to forget to drink when we are grieving. Then we also get gut microbial imbalances. So I've already mentioned we have the good and the bad microbes in our gut. It's not just bacteria, it's also viruses, fungi, yeasts, and parasites. We all have parasites, but more harmless ones usually. And so when the good guys are decimated, the harmful ones thrive, and they live off sugar. So they thrive when we eat a lot of sugar. So, and they can also influence our brain through various molecules that they make and create to influence us to go for sugar. So they can directly influence the way we think, feel, and behave. And then the gut bacteria, the good guys, also produce B12, which is again very important for a neurotransmitter, which is important for cognitive function and memory. And brain fog is one of the symptoms of lack of B12, and magnesium, by the way, as well. And the gut microbes also regulate the levels of neurotransmitters and the precursors for the neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. So when we haven't got the right levels of good guys, again, you know, our brain will be affected, because dopamine is important for so many things, for mood, sleep, motivation, memory, learning, our behavior, and, you know, reward and addictions. So when our dopamine levels are low, we get, again, sugar cravings and addictions like alcohol addiction. And when serotonin is low, we also get cravings for sugar and starchy carbs. So I just want to point out where are all the sugar cravings can be coming from. And then we also get hormonal imbalances, because we have one of the major stress hormones is cortisol. And when that's rising at the wrong time of the day, our sleep and wake cycle gets completely disrupted. So we tend to then have cortisol rising in the evening instead of in the morning, which is not very helpful. And then when our stress levels are high, our hunger hormone is also elevated, so we get hungrier more easily, and the leptin hormones are decreased, which is the hormone that signals fullness in the body, in the stomach. So again, that can also lead to serious cravings. And then, of course, we have the craving for comfort, because we're grieving. That's another natural craving. So we tend to then, in our modern day society, go for comfort food, like the convenience food that manufacturers know how to produce it to give us this bliss. You know, when we eat this food, they have a certain proportion of fat, sugar, and salt that we then find blissful. So very sneaky of them. But that's not the end of the story. We also get blood sugar imbalances. And this is what a blood sugar roller coaster looks like, sorry. So we can get a blood sugar roller coaster like this from stress on its own. But also when we then eat convenience food, comfort food, traditional ones, cakes, white bread, pizza, ready-made meals. So they cause the blood sugar to rise quite rapidly, and half an hour later, the blood sugar levels crash. because insulin tries to get all the sugar out of the blood into the cells, and it can overdo it, and then our sugar levels plummet. And then we eat something, because that's when we get cravings. I don't know whether you can see the right-hand side. We get hunger pangs, we get low energy, like an afternoon slump. Our mood takes a serious dip, and this can also cause depression and anxiety when this happens. And can you imagine what happens when we are then, faced with all the emotional ups and downs of grief? So we have then a true double whammy to deal with. So this is really key to understanding that we can cope better with our mood, emotions, and energy levels when we try to keep our blood sugar levels as stable as possible by eating a lot of food with a lot of fiber. So white bread, white flour, and cakes and biscuits is lacking fiber, and a lot of breakfast cereals like Kellogg cornflakes is lacking fiber. So you really have to be aware that you need a lot of fiber to balance the blood sugar levels and keep them as stable as possible. So has anybody noticed this, actually, the impact of food on your mood, anxiety levels, energy, any cravings, or anything else? I would like to hear about your experiences. And I forgot to mention, we also can get this blood sugar roller coaster when we have an irregular meal routine. So when we skip breakfast, we start with low blood sugar levels that can make us hungry and irritated and all sorts of things. And, skipping meals can also cause this blood sugar crash. So that's another important thing that I'm going to recommend, regular daily meal routine. So
I'm happy to go first. I definitely not so much the sugar roller coaster, but I think my glucose control is not too bad. But I have a really strong sense when I haven't slept very well. So when I'm tired, I have a lot of cravings for things I wouldn't normally be interested in, and then I feel more tired. So I guess it's slightly different, but maybe linked.
No. When we have lack of sleep, the same happens to our hunger and appetite and fullness hormone. That's again, the hunger hormones go up, the levels, and the fullness hormone levels go down.
Yeah.
So that explains it. Yeah. So good sleep is very important, but yeah, it's another thing that many grieving people struggle with.
Sandy, were you going to say something?
Hello. Yeah, as you were saying that, I've typed in the text box, notice it on sleep and desire to eat, and can get into a negative cycle. I thought you were actually reading mine.
No, I haven't got that far.
I mean, that is so what happens to me, and then it kind of like the whole rhythm goes wrong.
Yeah. So it's very important what kind of breakfast we have to counter this lack of energy, and because the wrong type of breakfast can make it worse, like eating, bread, for example, or Kellogg's cornflakes, or something with a high sugar content. So really check the food labels.
Diane, are you happy to? Diane is just popping a comment in the chat box. Diane, would you like to take yourself off mute and speak, or do you want me to read out your comment? I'll give it 10 seconds and then okay, I shall read. So Diane was saying that she has low mood because she's been unwell, first with a UTI, so a urine infection, then with a chest infection, then a stomach bug, and she's now has low iron and vitamin D3. Was eating a lot of sugar, but never noticed much of a dip, but just an addiction to sugar. and then a specific question. So thank you for that context, Diane, and for sharing that with us. And then Diane's specific question is, what would you recommend for breakfast? For maybe someone in Diane's situation, but I guess probably applies to all of us.
I'm going to go into that, so bear with me. I'm going to, this is just, you know, making it clear what's going on, right? I mean, this is not really, it's much more complex than this, and I try to really hone it down to the basics, but this is really what we all need to know, what's definitely going on in every grieving person. And
Great.
then
Sorry, Sabine, sorry,
yeah.
Jane Verity Smart would just like to
Yeah,
say something, if that's okay, if you want to unmute yourself, Jane.
Hi. So I just came out with this the other day. So I lost my husband in July 2022. So it's just over 18 months. And I've been struggling with back pain, well, all my life, because I've got hypermobility, but I really started struggling in the October. And it's not really improved. It kind of gets a bit better and then gets worse again. And it wasn't until I was speaking to somebody 2 days ago, because I've kept on saying, you know, all the things that happen with grief. And I've said, I don't feel angry. And then I was talking to somebody on Tuesday and I said, actually, my body's angry. And I think that's where the pain's coming from. And I'd like to maybe understand a bit more about how I can deal with that.
with anger.
But
Well,
I'm not angry. I don't feel angry.
Well, we're very good at suppressing anger. I've recently seen a homeopath and I've got 20,000 layers of anger in my spleen. That's really probably not even, yeah, I won't go into too many details, but we are very good at suppressing anger.
Right.
And in anger, we always have to look out for the liver. But we make things easier for the liver if we look out for our digestion first. It all starts with the way we eat, how we eat, and I'll go into more details about that. But improving our digestion and our digestive strength of how well we absorb things, break down things and then absorb them is going to make a massive difference for the liver, who has to clear out all the toxins and waste. So the less waste we produce in our gut, the less the liver has to deal with. And also when we prevent constipation, we don't have to recycle all the waste because it sits there too long and goes back into the liver. So I didn't want to actually talk about the liver today, but that's another piece of the puzzle, right? And anger, the seed of anger is in the liver. And the liver is a very hot organ, and anger is very hot. It's a fiery emotion. So I had actually a problem with the liver because I got hot flushes. I was pushed into menopause, and hot flushes is a sign of liver stagnation and congestion, because then the energy can't go down, it stays up, and it can also cause migraines. So because all the energy stagnates in the liver and it just moves upwards instead of spreads all around the body.
That's really interesting, because I had a really bad headache on Saturday.
Oh, okay, right.
And then on Sunday morning I had a hot flush, and I'm perimenopausal. So that makes more sense now.
Yeah, just start with the basics. Really simple things, you know, like improving your digestion, and you will see that makes a difference. But for anger, yoga and meditation and breathing, those are very important. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Right. And then the last bit I really want to mention the thyroid, because the thyroid is also so overlooked. There's so many people, like about 60% of the world, well, I'm not sure about the world population, but the Western population suffering from low thyroid or any kind of thyroid issues, and it's mostly low thyroid. And grieving people really get thyroid problems because, again, of the stress. So we can also vacillate between low thyroid function and excessive thyroid function because of the stress, right? So it depends on the day, probably, on how our emotions are and our emotional stress and how we are dealing with it. And so watch out for any of these signs: constipation, brain fog, achy joints, fatigue, poor sleep, hair loss, depression, anxiety, feeling cold all the time. It's and weight gain is actually not on the list, but what the thyroid does is it actually regulates our metabolism, and that means it regulates our energy reserves. When we are grieving, our energy plummets because the thyroid is trying to protect our energy reserve. So it turns the metabolism down, it slows it down. That's why we can then get constipation, weight gain, and fatigue, right? So it just tries to you know, preserve the energy that we have to keep vital functions in the body going, because otherwise, you know, like that, we do need like 60% of the energy goes into digesting the food that we eat, and then goes back into the next meal. So, and when we're not eating properly, you can already see that the thyroid will be struggling. And the other thing that's often overlooked, and I only found out through my studies, is that thyroid needs a lot of vitamins and minerals. And again, nutrient deficiencies, right? Iron, you mentioned it, Jane. We get lack of iron because of low energy. When there's lack of oomph in the blood, because we need lots of blood, strong blood to digest our food properly, we get lack of oomph. We digest our food less well. And then we don't get the iron from the food that we eat, and we get lack of iron. And iron is actually the most important mineral for the thyroid, or not iodine. So, and also magnesium again is important. Vitamin D is so important for thyroid function, and you can see the other ones, but there's 20 in total, B vitamins. So this is just it's the basics. So really think of the thyroid, and coffee is a thyroid suppressant, as I found out myself last summer. I had a very slow heartbeat because of thyroid problems caused by coffee. So I had to stop drinking coffee. So to sum things up, we get massive stress that dampens our digestive strength, our digestive fire. And by which I mean also our stomach acid levels are affected, our levels of digestive enzymes and bile that we need to break down the food properly. We get all sorts of cravings, and we also get a blood sugar roller coaster. So no wonder we are permanently exhausted, we get depressed, we get anxious, we can't think properly, and we can't sleep, and we get all sorts of weird grief symptoms. And I always say awareness is the first step towards change. So we need to be aware of the basics. And because stress is a major driver, and I already pointed out the two parts of the autonomic nervous system that play a big role in grief. So on the left-hand side, you've got the fight and flight system, the sympathetic nervous system, and on the right-hand side, the parasympathetic nervous system that puts us into rest and digest mode. And that's the one that's not functioning properly in grief. So we need to stimulate the vagus nerve. So again, yoga, meditation can help. And the thing I really love is breathing. Breathing is, again, underestimated. The power of the breath is enormous. But as I've mentioned before, we start to not breathe properly. So the first thing we need to do is check somebody's breathing. Are they breathing into the tummy? Can they actually breathe into the tummy? Because they might be really, the breath may be stuck here. So they may need some chiropractor, for example, to do some diaphragm release when the diaphragm has got stuck to the rib cage. make sure that they're nose breathing and not breathing through the mouth. I recently did a webinar with somebody, Western trained, not Ayurvedic trained, and he pointed out how important the impact of stress, but also sedentary life, or our sedentary lifestyle, and processed food. They all impact our CO2 levels, and CO2 is not just a waste gas that we exhale. It's actually important to keep the levels high in the body because it regulates the rate and the volume of our breathing. So if we eat processed food, which a lot of people start eating when they're bereaved because they can't be motivated to cook, then the CO2 levels go down, and then the oxygen can't get into the cells. So again, it impacts our energy levels. So breathing is important in so many ways. And it's free, you know, we have it all in us. We just need to become more aware of the way we're breathing and change it gradually. But there's also other ways we can stimulate the vagus nerve, and very important part is here where the vagus nerve has to go into the body because it connects all the major organs. It runs from the brainstem to the tailbone. So it's a very, very important link, as I mentioned before, between the gut and the brain. And here we can do a lot for the vagus nerve. We can gargle, we can hum. So the humming breath is, you know, you combine the two. Singing can help, but also chewing. So really simple things that can help us. So what I wanted to do actually is do a brief breathing exercise to just check so that we can check in with ourselves. And just, if you want to do it with me, close your eyes and maybe put your hands on your tummy and just become the observer. Just notice where you're breathing from at this moment in time. Are you breathing into your belly, or are you breathing from your chest only? And how is your breathing? Is it slow? Is it rapid? And how does it make you feel to breathe like this? I'm aware of what your breath is doing and your tummy especially is doing on the inhale. Is it moving out, or is it moving towards the spine on the inhale? Because a lot of people do it the wrong way around. And now I invite you to do a deep inhale and move the tummy outwards as far as you can. The first time is always the trickiest. And then on the exhale, pull the tummy muscles towards the back of the spine. Powerfully make the tummy as flat as possible. And this activates the parasympathetic receptors in the lower lobes of the lungs. So this automatically puts you in rest and digest mode. And then take another deep inhale. Move the tummy out again, and this time you will find it's much easier because we pulled the tummy muscles right back. We've got longer to go. And then pull the tummy muscles again towards the spine on the exhale. And this is also a very good exercise to clear the lungs of stale air. Right? And you can already feel the difference, right? We all feel much calmer already. And I recommend this exercise, especially before and after a meal, because it will improve the way you digest your food. It puts you into rest and digest mode, and it ups the levels of your digestive juices by 25%. So you will be able to break down your food better. And I already mentioned chewing. because it also stimulates the vagus nerve, but also, of course, we help the body expand less energy for the breaking down of the food by already doing it for it. So more liquid the food is that goes down into the stomach, the less the stomach has to do. Then, of course, eat in a calm and stress-free environment. So don't watch a horror movie or a thriller while eating your meal. It's not going to help you. Watching anything actually while eating is going to divide the energy away from the stomach, and some energy is then also going to go into the brain to process what, you know, is going into the brain and what the brain has to process. So it's never a good thing to do something else apart from eating. But also it will invite you to eat more mindfully, so to savor your food. And by savoring your food, you're also going to make sure that the digestive juices are flowing better. And I'll only briefly mention the other ones because I'll go into more detail about them in a minute. So regular daily meal routine is also important. Main meal at lunchtime, if possible. And there are ways to make sure that you can have your main meal at lunchtime. Early and light dinner. Avoid overeating. Eat only when you're truly hungry. Avoid difficult to digest food, and above all, avoid cold drinks and food. Because again, this constricts the blood that goes into the stomach, and like stress, and then we can't digest our food properly. So have drinks only at room temperature. So ideal meal times. I say ideal because I know it's very difficult at first. We all get, you know, our daily routine goes out of sync, and most of our daily routines is irregular anyway. I mean, I see so many clients, and with every single one of them, they don't have a regular routine, let alone a regular meal routine. So the ideal times are breakfast at 8, but at the latest by 9 o'clock, and a light breakfast because our digestion follows the sun, and it's just revving up and waking up in the morning. So an English breakfast is not recommended, especially not when you're grieving. Lunch between, so a 4-hour gap if possible. No snacks. Lunch between 12 and 2, because that's when the sun is at its highest point, and that's when our digestive system is at its strongest. So anything that's difficult to digest, you should be eating at lunchtime, like cheese, wheat, meat, especially red meat, shouldn't be eaten at dinner time. So that sort of thing. And dinner should be by 7 o'clock, because we should be leaving at least 3 hours before we go to bed, and the ideal bedtime is 10 o'clock, because then we start processing the toxins that we have accumulated during the day. And if we don't go to bed between 10, or are sleeping between 10 and 2, we can't process the toxins, and our energy levels plummet again. I wanted to share this, so just to give you some meal planning ideas, because I know we can struggle with meal planning, but without planning, we don't get to eat the right food. That's not possible, I found out as well. So I want to share this with you to give you some ideas of what can make it easier. So you can find this video on my website. But there's also other resources that you can find there, like the store cupboard essentials. I wanted to really make it easy for especially recently bereaved people to carry on cooking. So I created this ebook with simple recipes, with what you should always have in your pantry and fridge, the herbs, the lentils, beans, and whatever. And also there's an adaptable shopping list in there. So you can download it from my website. And I also did a free webinar for another funeral director a year ago on what could help us, why a regular daily meal routine is important, and what can help us re-establish one. And I did a radio episode on meal planning and prepping last April. And if you need any of the links, then just contact me. So yeah, there was a question about what we should have for breakfast. So it should be light and it should be warm. Why warm? Because cold food needs to be cooked by the stomach, so it needs more energy, takes more energy out of our body. So if we eat warm things, they're already cooked, that makes it easier for the body to digest it. And this is all about improving digestion to make grieving easier. So smoothies, but they're not, my smoothies are not cold smoothies, they're always warm. They always contain fiber, because our breakfast needs to be, just like every other meal, rich in fiber. And I always recommend having something with flax seeds, for example, because they also have omega-3 in them, beneficial oils, and they are rich in protein. So every well-balanced meal should have a lot of fiber in it, some protein and some essential beneficial oils. So flax seeds are ideal. You can also put flax seeds in a porridge. It's very quickly made, 5 minutes top. I love stewed apples with millets. That's my favorite breakfast because I've got a sweet tooth and it's sweet tasting, and it's yeah, nourishing, building. Any questions about breakfast? I'm giving you some good ideas of what you can have, and also in the store cupboard essentials there are some other breakfast ideas. So
and Sabine, Diane's saying that she's allergic to oats, but millet would be a good alternative.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
millet
buckwheat maybe?
Yeah, buckwheat, quinoa, so easy to replace oat. Yeah.
Yeah, so different grains, I guess. Hope
Yes.
that helps, Diane.
Yeah, whole grains, very good. We should always like have a lot of variety in our meals anyway, so not just eat oat porridge all the time, but yeah, mix it up a bit. So I already mentioned what a well-balanced meal should look like. So lots and lots of vegetables. More than half of the plate should be full of vegetables. And you can use all sorts of colors. Some protein, just a handful is enough. So don't overeat on meat. We only need 4 tablespoons actually for its medicinal, properties. The iron and the zinc we easily get from meat, and the B12. And the beneficial oils, 1 tablespoon at least per meal. And some people need more because they have a drier body. Where do we find fiber? I've already mentioned vegetables, but also fruits, legumes, beans and lentils are rich in fiber. Nuts and seeds are very rich in fiber. Meat, have I forgotten anything? Fish. And what does it do? It helps in so many ways. It keeps our blood sugar levels stable, and therefore our mood, our energy, our emotions, our mental clarity is better. We have less cravings. It slows down the release of sugar and that's how it helps. It feeds our beneficial guys, and they love fiber, so it is their preferred fuel. And when they thrive, we thrive. We are happy when they are happy, and it prevents constipation. So a client of mine has recently introduced breakfast, a regular breakfast, and she is having porridge, and all of a sudden she's no longer constipated. So she goes regularly every day instead of every second or third day, which is really important for her because she's low in mood and has serious, weight issues, and it helps to just get rid of all the toxins and the waste every morning. Yeah, so the easiest way to get more fiber into your meals is by eating lots of colors. Lentils come in all sorts of colors, beans come in all sorts of colors. So again, you get the variety, and the more the more varied your diet is, the more varied your gut microbiome will be. So we have a lot of different species of bacteria, and some of them we will never know that live in our gut. And when we make sure we eat different sorts of vegetables and colored foods, we get lots of different types of fiber, and all of them are going to feed some species of good bacteria. So you don't have to worry about, am I feeding the right guys? And you will have a nice abundant composition of species in your gut, and that's what we want. We don't want just 10 or 5. We want many different species, and it's very easy to just make an omelette more colorful, or a hummus more colorful, by adding a beetroot or some grated carrot or an avocado, and just play with the green color. You can make a green stir fry with lots of green vegetables, or you make it as colorful as possible. It's up to you. You can be as creative as you like with it. And we can also make simple food swaps. Now, I won't go into too much detail because I think we're running out of time. I can talk about this forever, as you can see. But one of the most beneficial things would be to swap out wheat. Wheat is heavy, it's difficult to digest. A lot of people can't digest it properly because of the gluten in there. And a good alternative, and the best bread, is actually spelled sourdough bread, because in the sourdough bread, the bacteria have already pre-digested the flour for you. So again, it's easier to digest. It's also nice. It's nicer than normal bread, I find. Substitute pasta with beans and lentils. Don't eat pasta all the time. It's fine to eat it once or twice a week, but not all the time. Lentils are really good for our female hormones and other things. So I love lentils personally. And you can also easily substitute wheat with buckwheat. And buckwheat is not a wheat, it's a pseudo grain. So, and very beneficial, and it's a protein, so you don't have to worry about getting protein in your meal. It's already there. Whereas wheat is not a protein, it's a carb. So cow's milk is also not so good, because it can actually lead to more mucus production and therefore lung congestion and also sinus congestion. So be careful with dairy, and it can make you addicted to dairy. So almond milk is very beneficial because it's got a lot of magnesium. So I love almond milk, but people also go for oat milk, but I find almond milk more beneficial because of the magnesium. Avoid cheese if you can in the evening, especially. And instead of white potatoes, you can also have sweet potatoes, which have more fiber. Jerusalem artichoke is really good food for the beneficial gut bacteria. And you can make mash with sweet potatoes, with cauliflower, broccoli, Jerusalem artichoke, carrots, or a mixture, So again, you can make a very colorful mash. And substitute sugar with raw honey. Again, it feeds the beneficial guys, and it's also got an affinity for the lungs, so it helps with lung congestion. Dates are really beneficial, got lots of vitamins, minerals, and fiber. And maple syrup is also unprocessed, and it has got vitamins and minerals in it. And don't eat margarine, please. We need beneficial oils, and butter is better than margarine. And also don't cook with refined cooking oils. They're processed oils, and they are usually come in a transparent plastic bottle, and those sort of oils are not beneficial for our cells anymore. Every cell and nerve cell, especially in our body, needs good fat. So please don't be on a low-fat diet. And also vitamin D can only be absorbed, and vitamin A and E and K when there's fat. They are only fat-soluble vitamins. And spice things up. Use ginger. Ginger is very good for any digestive issue and also for low appetite. Fennel seeds can help with stagnation here, difficulty swallowing. Again, because the vagus nerve is affected, and the vagus nerve regulates swallowing in the body. So you can help by chewing a handful of fennel seeds, and that will make the food go down. Also, if you have any heavy feeling in your stomach, food sitting there too long, chew some fennel seeds, swallow them, and you will find everything's flowing again. The other thing that can help with difficulty swallowing is actually eating pure chocolate, the dark chocolate. There's a substance in it that can also help with difficulty swallowing, but not too much, right? So cumin and fennel seeds are also good in any meal. Just add them. Turmeric is good for the liver if you have any anger. Turmeric is really good. Yeah. And other spices. Just be careful with hot spices like cayenne pepper, chilies and things like that. Some people have a very fiery nature, rapid metabolism, so they get diarrhea and softer stools more easily. They should steer away from hot spices, especially in the warmer months of the year. Yeah, here's a list of foods that improve digestion. So what to avoid is probably better to talk about. So we already said heavy dense food like red meat, wheat and cheese, they take more energy to digest. And especially avoiding combining meat with cheese like in a burger. That's 2 proteins, and it takes more enzymes to digest the meat and the cheese than when we only keep to 1 protein a meal. Cold and raw food, because it needs to be cooked by the stomach, and combining fruit with other food, especially dairies, and no yogurt with fruit, and is also cold, so it's not beneficial. So cooked, warm, soft, soupy foods are easy to digest. Everything that's already been mashed, pureed, broken down, makes it easy for the digestive system. Yeah, drink wisely, because we need fluids to produce stomach acid, digestive enzymes, and bile. They're called digestive juices, and we need fluids to produce them. So if you forget to drink, make yourself a flask every morning, like me, and make it a part of your morning routine, because otherwise you may forget to make it later on in the day. Drink more warm fluids mainly, because we want to avoid blood constriction in the stomach, especially around meal times. Don't drink anything cold. Stop drinking half an hour before a meal and drink again an hour after a meal. Our digestive fire has to be really strong, so the stomach acid mustn't be diluted, right? And we already have like a weaker stomach acid because of the stress levels, so we just need to be mindful. Limit your caffeine intake, especially coffee. So if you are a coffee addict like I used to be aware that it's the dopamine that's probably making you addicted to coffee. You know, lack of joy in our life, the heart is affected. Yeah, so our emotions can make us go to coffee, but coffee is also dehydrating. It's actually causing more stress, not less stress. Can also make anxiety worse, can make it worse for the kidneys, and they already have to produce all the stress hormones. So be mindful of your kidneys, and yeah, just have a mug of good coffee if you need one, and savor it, and keep it to 1 cup. Avoid sweetened drinks because of the sugar. Avoid fizzy drinks because that can make gas and bloating worse if you already have gas and bloating. And make wise alcohol choices. And if you have any alcohol addiction and you find it difficult to stay away from alcohol, think that your GABA levels, that's another neurotransmitter, may be low, or your dopamine may be low. Avoid snacking in the afternoon. We want to keep the digestive juices at a high level for the next main meal. So between lunch and dinner, that would be, keeping them high for dinner. So avoid snacking. If you really need something to pick you up in the afternoon, have a hot cocoa drink with pure cocoa powder, again, almond milk, magnesium, and dried fruits, or a drizzle of maple syrup. This is how you can actually check whether you're drinking enough. These are all signs of dryness in the body. Joint and muscle pain actually can be caused by dehydration. Also think of the kidneys, they need enough fluids. Bad breath and dry mouth is an indicator. Constipation and other digestive issues, headaches, and accelerated heartbeat. So listen to your heart. Other ways to distract yourself from eating. Have an Epsom salt bath or a foot bath. Again, you get the magnesium from the Epsom salt into your body that way. It's another way of increasing your magnesium levels. Distract yourself. Maybe, instead of eating something for comfort, you want to watch a video of your loved one, or, remind yourself of good times by watching looking at some pictures. And move. Dancing is really good, but also hula hooping, gardening, yoga, walking is really good. Go outside at least once a day. Not for the vitamin D at this moment. We're not making any vitamin D through the skin at the moment, but just for our endorphins and for feeling good, and also for resetting our circadian rhythms. So make it easier to go to bed at a certain time and wake up in the morning. And it also does, helps with detoxifying the body, speeds up metabolism, so helps our digestion, basically. So yeah, I've come to the end of it, nearly the end of it. So small changes are important, one small step at a time. So these are all ideas of how you can improve your digestion, but you don't have to follow them in that order. But I would say start with your breathing. That's not only going to have a super beneficial effect on your digestion, but on all your health and well-being, on your mood and everything. And that's how you can take back control of your life. And because you also take back control of your gut bacteria, right? Your food choices determine the composition of your gut microbiome. So you want the good guys, not the bad guys. The bad guys, you can't eradicate the bad guys, but you can keep them to a minimum. Okay. If you are interested in more support with habit change, I'm just launching an email series. That's, every week for the next 52 weeks, you're going to receive an email with a suggestion of a small habit change that can have to do with your breathing, drinking, eating, sleeping, or all of them at the same time. And there's also a community that you gain access to, and where we are going to connect and share our challenges and victories. So if you want to know more, you can find it on my website, all the information. And this is all the other things that I offer: one-to-one support, group support, cooking support, meal planning support, vitamin D support. And this is how you can connect with me.